The Edmonton Oilers are heading back to the Stanley Cup Playoffs. This time, they're hoping to change the ending.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 stream sports podcast network. On today's show, we are going to dive into the regular season so far from a big picture perspective. To start out the show, we will talk about the long winding road, some of the key storylines and plot points for the Oilers. In our second segment, we'll pivot to highlighting 4 individual players I feel deserve individual commendation for their performance, beyond the superstars, of course. And then in our final segment, we will put a bow somewhat on the regular season. We'll talk a little bit about the road ahead, what's left to be accomplished over the final 2 regular season games, and a whole lot more. So to start out, the NHL regular season fascinates me in that hockey is a hyper physical, extremely fast played game, but we play it on the calendar comparable to what we would say basketball, and not to the degree of baseball. You don't play 5 or 6 games in a week you do in baseball. But the fact a game like hockey that is so physically demanding, that is so taxing, is a game we play for 82 regular season games. And as you guys know, we're going to 84 next year. We're contracting 2 preseason games, and 2 more regular season games are going on at the end to make division opponents all 4 times per year. And that 84 game threshold is going to eventually cause a tipping point where we're going to have inefficiencies, and injuries are always going to be a part of hockey. That's just the nature of the sport. It's dangerous. It's physical. But the Oilers in particular, a lot of the last 2 years are going to be colored by the road they've been on. The Oilers, very much as a present team, exist in the context of what's happened before to them. And I think anytime you get into this perennial contender status, the way the Oilers have for much of the last 3 to 4 years, you're going to end up taking stock a lot. And with the expectation so high, with the regular season objectives largely being defined by making the playoffs and hopefully securing home ice. But as last year's Oilers team proved, they can win playoff series without home ice. It is not a necessity for playoff success. If anything, you could argue that the Oilers' willingness to manage their players' health down the backstretch of the regular season last year enabled them to go into the playoffs and really hit the ground running. And at this point, if you're a Stanley Cup contender, you have a 9 or 10 month regular season now. Think about it abstractly. The Oilers, they lose in Game 6 against Florida last week of June. You have July, you have free agency where some guys are going to move around, some extensions get announced, that stuff. But you have July, you have a lot of August. Not all of August, but most of August. By mid-September, if you don't live year-round in your team city, you're going to come back probably first or second week of September. You'll work out with a few teammates, informal workouts, usually a captain's practice or 2. But you're back in the loop by mid-September. You really only get July and August to decompress, to unplug, and you're still going to work out, of course. We're in 2026, there aren't athletes that shut it down for 2 months of the offseason to preserve their bodies. Even if we're just talking about hitting the gym, not even being on the ice, the level of fitness required to be an NHL player today is bordering on insane, and you just can't be shutting it down to that degree. And that road, think about the fact the Oilers have done that 2 consecutive years now, where their season has ended the final week of June. You get a week draft, free agency, July, August, you're back in Edmonton mid-September, and you are on the horse. You have training camp, you have preseason games, and then you are on that long winding road. October, November, December, January. This year, you had an Olympic break sandwiched in February where some of your key players, i.e. McDavid, played 5 of the most intense games they're ever going to play in their entire life. And 5 games over 2.5 weeks isn't crazy on surface level, but you think about the emotional toll that something like that experience might have on a player. And then you add that to the context we were just talking about for the Oilers at large. The fact this is a team that has gone to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. 2 years ago was one win away, one goal away from arguably the greatest comeback in the history of North American sports. One goal. They win that Game 7 against Florida 2 years ago. That's the best comeback in the history of North American sports in a playoff series. And all of that adversity, all of that struggle laid the context for where you're at now. Think about this. This is an Oilers team that at various points this year was deliberating on an in-season coaching change. And whether or not there was ever a serious appetite to remove Kris Knoblauch and bring in either Pete DeBoer or somebody unaffiliated with the team at that point. Rick Bowness was out there. He ended up in Columbus. Pete DeBoer finally obviously signed with the Islanders. Bruce Cassidy is sitting out there right now. 2 weeks ago when the Golden Knights fired Bruce Cassidy, I mused quite a bit on the show here about entertaining the idea of Bruce Cassidy replacing Kris Knoblauch come season's end, whenever that might be. But when you think about that, then you add in the fact that, like last year's Avalanche, the Oilers remade their goalie room on the fly this year. Last year, the Avalanche were getting 860 goaltending from Alexander Georgiev. They went out and got Mackenzie Blackwood. They went out and got Scott Wedgwood. The Oilers this year, their gambit was not as successful in Connor Ingram, who has been as good as you can realistically expect for somebody who hasn't really ever been a bell cow starter. Ingram's numbers will not blow you away, but he is right at the cut line of passable goaltending. And then Tristan Jarry obviously has not worked out to the degree Edmonton hoped he would. He has not been what the Oilers expected from him. He has lost the job to Connor Ingram, and Tristan Jarry still has multiple years of contract left with the Oilers, which means the Oilers are going to have to sort that out in the offseason. Ingram, I believe, is a free agent at year's end, but Tristan Jarry is under contract for multiple more years. You think about the fact they changed both goalies in season. You think about the injuries they've had this year. Draisaitl is going to play 65 of a possible 80 games so far, so 65 out of 82 because he won't dress more likely than not for the final 2 regular season games. Nugent-Hopkins has played 70 of an 80 possible games. Zach Hyman, who missed the first 6 weeks of the season, has missed 23 games. He's played 57 of an possible 80. Jake Wallman, somebody the Oilers, I imagine, were envisioning to be the long-term Matthias Ekholm replacement, has only played 51 of 80 games this year, and that's a player who's never hit that 82-game Ironman threshold, and that is a cause for concern considering the Oilers have Wallman under contract for 7 more years at $7 million. And then think about the lineup changes this year. Think about what the Oilers lineup looked like on opening night, where Trent Frederick was on the left of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, where David Tomaszek was in the Zach Hyman spot on the power play. David Tomaszek went back to Europe. Trent Frederick has spent the majority of the last 2 months on the team's fourth line. And you think about the fact that the Oilers have played 11 different defensemen this year, at least one game. And injuries are inevitable. They are a part of the game. Injured players stay injured, as Bill Belichick would like to say. And the Oilers have not really, up until the last 3 weeks or so, figure out who they were supposed to be. And that's the key for me in understanding a regular season. Did you make progress on what you set out to accomplish? Did your young players take the leap? Did your veterans bounce back? Did they live up to expectations? Did they underperform expectations? And all of that gets marinated, if you will, into one larger conversation about the team. Right now, the Oilers are middle of the pack in the Western Conference at large. I believe if we were doing the old school 1 through 8, they'd be the 6th seed, which is not the greatest of looks for a team that had such high expectations and has doled out a lot of contract extensions into the near future for ancillary guys like the aforementioned Jake Wallman. So we are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we return, we're going to highlight 4 players this year beyond the McDavids, Draisaitl's, Bouchards, Hymans of the world, who obviously deserve their credit and their flowers. We're going to highlight 4 guys who have really impressed me this year, and I've come away really admiring them, both as hockey players, but also as people, right after this. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. The part I love, everything lives in one clean thread, calls, texts, and voicemails. The whole team sees the conversation, so nothing slips through the cracks. An AI summary saves serious time by logging calls and highlighting next steps automatically. It makes your business feel more organized and more responsive. Make this the season. No opportunity and no customer slip away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's quo.com/lockedonnhl. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Monday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are walking through the Oilers season. And with just 2 regular season games remaining against the Avalanche and then the Canucks, there's never been a better time to get in the mix of the Everydayer Club for the postseason. I'm in there Monday to Friday during Oiler games, and I pop in every now and then during the day. The other Everydayers are in there ready to cut it up about their favorite teams. Why aren't you? And with that said, speaking of cutting it up and things we want to talk about that we're excited about, this segment is me getting to hockey nerd a little bit. So if you're an Everydayer, you understand where I'm at. And if this is your first episode, hello, welcome. I'm glad you've chosen now, this time of year, to get involved. There's no better time than right as the playoffs are starting. Even if you're someone who only checks in on the Oilers every few weeks, this is a great opportunity to get ready mentally for what's on the horizon this upcoming weekend. And for me, the regular season is proving ground. It's a laboratory where if you're creative, if you're resourceful, you can use your games and your ice time to learn about your team, to learn about your players, to identify what they do well and how we can maximize how they do that well. The first player I want to highlight will not surprise you. That is, of course, Vasily Podkolzin. Over the last 2 years, I have grown such an admiration for the way Podkolzin plays. And coming into the year, I had said to myself, if he gave them 15 goals, I would be really happy. As we sit here right now with 2 games to go, Podkolzin has played all 80 games so far. He's playing 15-18 per game. He has 19 goals. He's 1 short of 20, and he's going to have 2 games remaining to try and get there. He scored 18 of those 19 goals at even strength. Amongst NHLers, that is 82nd in the league for even strength goals. By simple math, there are 3 first-line spots on every team. There are 32 teams. If you do 32 times 3, you get 96. 82nd out of 96 is first line, even strength goal production. This is a player the Oilers got for a draft pick. This is a guy who, if last year doesn't work out, very much could have ended up entirely out of the NHL. And for good measure, on top of being a really good even strength goal scorer, he's 13th in hits in the entire league. He has 235 registered hits as of 8:53 p.m. on Sunday, April 12th. That level of commitment, that level of intensity is really important. And the Oilers, they don't have Warren Fogle anymore. They don't have Evander Kane. They don't have Corey Perry. The Oilers don't have a ton of ruggedness. Yes, Zach Hyman hits a lot, Trent Frederick to a lesser extent, and the aforementioned Podkolzin. But Podkolzin has made pretty much everybody he's played with better this year. You've watched McDavid, him, and Savoie absolutely cook over the last 2.5-3 weeks in Draisaitl's absence since that injury on March 15th. And I have loved every second of watching Podkolzin figure out what he can and can't do. And I think that's my favorite individual player-by-player evaluation. I love watching guys understand what they can get away with, what's going to work and what doesn't, and how they take that information and ultimately apply it. On that same note, another player, again, this will not surprise you. The last 2 weeks of Matt Savoie have been an absolute treat. And when it comes to Savoie in particular, this was your inflection point. 4 years since being drafted, he's summer 2022. He's a former 9th overall pick. There have been Many a top 10 pick who struggle to get that first real cup of coffee in the NHL. There's nothing wrong with them, but there's an inherent concern anytime a guy takes 3 or 4 years to get settled as a regular NHLer, especially for somebody who didn't go the NCAA route. You know, if we're talking about somebody who goes to Boston College, Wisconsin, Denver, wherever for 2 or 3 years, yeah, you would like them to get to the NHL sooner. But there's an understanding that when you draft a college hockey guy, it might be a little while before you can get them. And for Savoie, who was a 9th overall pick of the Sabres 4 years ago now, this upcoming draft this summer will be the 4th one. He has really jumped out over the last 3 weeks. And it's not a coincidence. You have watched this player put up his best statistical production in the span of games where his ice time has jumped exponentially. So 1450 per game through the Olympic break. Between the end of the Olympic break and when Leon Draisaitl gets hurt on March 15th, Savoie's up to 1635 per game. Since March 15th, Matt Savoie is playing 18 minutes and 11 seconds per game. He's got the 7th most points of Oiler forwards this season. He's got 15 of those points in his last 22 regular season games. And that level of jump and that level of confidence he's going to get from this jump in production is only going to help the Oilers out. And that's what I mean when I say you have to invest in your guys. It's one thing to trade for Savoie. It's another thing for him to give you 15 points in 22 games in as crucial a time of year as possible because you're missing your second best player. Next up, another player we've done quite a few individual episodes on this year, Jack Roslovic. I love the bet on yourself guy. The mercenary skilled winger who bounces around from contender to contender is almost a lock for 15 to 20 goals every single year, is a really underdeveloped archetype. I find these types of players who are looking for the best possible situation often really interesting because usually that means they're good, but there are concerns within that player's game that prevents general managers really from committing to them. And we've seen Roslovic go from Winnipeg to Columbus to the Rangers to Carolina and now to Edmonton. He sat the entire offseason last year, didn't get an offer. The Oilers signed him. He plays the 3rd or 4th game of the year. And Roslovic's 4th on the team in goals. 17 of those 21 goals are at even strength. He's played middle six-ish, I would say skewed top 6, 1543 per game. He's played 67 out of 77 possible games because, like we said, he didn't play the first few because he hadn't signed yet. 6.5 goals above replacement. And the underlying numbers aren't great. He's, I think, a -1 in terms of even strength goal differential this year, but he's given the Oilers raw goal scoring, and that is the most valuable skill you can have in this league. It is what will get you paid. And then real quick, I did just want to shout out Connor Ingram. Anytime as a goalie, you're thrown into an entirely new environment, it can go really bad. Anytime you as a goalie are coming into a team you haven't played with before, there are times it's going to feel like getting thrown into the deep end of the pool and not knowing how to swim. And look, the water's gone over Connor Ingram's head quite a few times this year. He has not been bulletproof. He has not been a godsend, but he has been good enough in the games he's played that the Oilers have what I would define a clear starter backup pecking order, which is important. The fact that he's made 28 starts, the most he's made in 2 years, I am concerned about what that workload is going to look like, say, the second round of the playoffs, if the Oilers should be able to get there, and what that would look like in terms of his play, because I do think the more a goalie plays, as they're not used to that workload, we've seen Jack Campbell, when he was still with the Leafs, struggle towards the end of the year with injuries. Joseph Woll, Anthony Stolarz as well have both dealt with injuries there in Toronto. And I think anytime you make that leap from backup or tandem into 2/3 of the starts, you're going to end up feeling it. And some guys have it in them to make that leap, and some guys just don't have the physical capacity to recover and to get back out there as often as they would need to be that traditional 1A starter. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we return, I'm going to wax poetically about the road ahead and what's left for the Oilers to accomplish. And you know what it is, but I want to talk about it anyway. There is nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part's not always so simple. That's why our friends at Game Time are the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without any of the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with you, the fans. Anytime you use the Game Time app, you are treated to best-in-class user experience. Things like all-in pricing up front, so there are no surprise fees. Check out my personal favorite, the panoramic seat view. They will show you the view of the game in your seat, in the app, before you buy them. There are no surprises on game day. You're not sitting behind the pole. You can see the entirety of the scoreboard and the entirety of the ice. You know what you're buying. Great last-minute options with tickets that get cheaper the closer you get to the start of games. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Monday edition of Locked On Oilers in the final week of the NHL regular season. Now, the playoffs are going to start next weekend. This will be my third playoff run as host of Locked On Oilers, which is crazy to say for me because I took over this role on an interim basis. I was not planning on becoming the full-time Locked On Oilers host, but the playoffs went the way they did 2 years ago, and I am eternally grateful to have stumbled upon such an incredible opportunity, such an incredible community. We're creeping up on that 3,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. We're creeping up on that 1 million all-time views metric on YouTube as well. And I just want to thank you to anyone who takes time out of their day to listen, to watch, even if it's for one segment, if it's for two, or you're in for the entire 30-ish minutes. Thank you. You are why I get to do this, and I don't get to do this without you. Anytime media people waste your time, that's the most insulting thing they can do. And I really do strive to give you value in your experience. And speaking of value, and we are reaching that point now. When it comes to the journey, the process, the regular season is one type of beast. It's who can be consistently best for 82 regular season games. Far and away this year, the Colorado Avalanche have established themselves as the best team in the NHL. That does not always correlate to playoff success. We saw the Jets last year go out in round 2. The Rangers the year before, they went out in the conference final. We have not had the President's Trophy winning team win the Stanley Cup as well since 2013. If you'll recall, 2013 was a lockout truncated season where we did not play a full 82-game schedule. The Blackhawks won the President's Trophy. They beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final that year. You'll remember Brandon Bollig scoring those 2 goals in about 20 seconds that won the Blackhawks the Stanley Cup. And I bring that up because the challenges of the regular season are different from the ones of the playoffs. When it comes to the postseason, it's not just consistency. It is consistency in conjunction with high peaks. Now, most of the time, you're going to have one stinker in every playoff series. No matter how good your team is doing, you're probably going to have one bad game. Every now and then, you'll have a real talent disparity between team 1 in the conference and the last team, the second wild card in this playoff format we presently have. And that gap will let you win in 4 or 5 games. We've seen the Avalanche, when they've been a 1 or a 2 seed, do a good job of closing the door early. I recall that one Nashville series where Connor Ingram, as a matter of fact, was the Nashville starter after a UC Saros injury. And I bring that up because the Oilers the last 2 years have had nice peaks in the regular season. 2 years ago, they go on the really long winning streak right after Kris Knoblauch gets settled in early on. Last year, they have, I want to say it's the 3rd best points percentage of any team in the NHL from American Thanksgiving through the All-Star break. And this year, that has not materialized. The Oilers have had nice pockets. This team has one 5-game winning streak all year. This team has played 38 different players, 4 different goalies, 11 defensemen. There have been a laundry list of guys who have cycled in and out. You think about all of the lineup changes, all of the different permutations, And that was just to get you here. As recently as a month ago, I was on this very show with legitimate concerns this team could miss the postseason. Now, that was me expecting Vegas to get going, and Vegas, as we sit here right now, is in first place in this division. That was me expecting Anaheim to continue what they had done in the first chunk of the season. Anaheim, a very enigmatic team, a team that has 2 different 8-game winning streaks, but has also lost 9 games in a row at one point this year. And I think Anaheim is a really good example of getting too high and getting too low. Your goal in the regular season is to maintain that baseline. You don't want to get too high and get overconfident. You don't want to get too low and not be able to recover. We've seen really good teams, the Tampa Bay team in 2019, the Bruins team 3 years ago now that lost in the first round to Florida. Those are my examples of a team that doesn't face adversity in the regular season. They get to the playoffs, and then they're down in that series. In Tampa's case, they were down 3-0. In Boston's case, they were down 3-2. And they weren't able to get back up off the canvas because they hadn't been through that struggle collectively as a group. This Oilers team has faced considerable adversity just this season. Then you add the context of last year, the year before. You lump in the Olympics now. You think about all of the conversation going into this season, the one that's about to end this upcoming weekend, about McDavid's extension, about Evan Bouchard's extension, about Draisaitl's extension kicking in, about how long can the Oilers keep kicking the can down the road and stay in a window of contention around McDavid and Draisaitl. Now, the Oilers are entering this playoff with less expectation than the last 2 years. Last year, in my heart of hearts, I really thought the Oilers were going to win the Stanley Cup. And not in a homer optimist. Like, I genuinely felt that the Oilers were peaking at the right time. They beat Vegas and Dallas in 5 games each. I really thought the Oilers had demonstrated they broke through. Zach Hyman breaking his wrist in Game 5 against Dallas will haunt me because I do think Hyman makes a difference in the final. But now, Colorado's better. Vegas, probably better on paper. Minnesota's probably better. Dallas is probably better. But because of this funky playoff format, let's say you get Anaheim in round 1, a team that does not play very good defense, that has a goalie who has never been in the postseason, against a team that is very top heavy in its roster construction. That's reasonable. I don't think it will be easy, but I would expect the Oilers to beat Anaheim. Then in the second round, you get Vegas or you get Utah. I think the Oilers can beat either of those teams. They've demonstrated as such during the regular season this year. Then you get to the conference final. Colorado and Dallas have thumped the Oilers this year. The Oilers did beat Colorado this year in the regular season at Colorado. It was a game where the goaltending was ridiculous, where the goaltending was very good for Edmonton, had to make a lot of saves, but that proved to be good enough. The journey is just beginning. This is not just a race. It is also a marathon. This is not just get to the finish line. I don't think the last 2 regular season games matter a whole lot in terms of what it means for the playoffs. I'd like to see guys get their incentives. For someone like Podkolzin getting to that 20-goal mark, that would be nice to see. For someone like Tristan Jarry, it would be nice to see him put a good game under his belt going into the playoffs to really have him mentally ready should he need to be called upon in the postseason. And it's really simple. The regular season is your pretext for what's to come. This Oilers team has been through a lot this year. I think this Oilers team has the chance to sneak up on people if they can seize their opportunity. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 stream sports podcast network. Be sure to check out the Everydayer Club. The link is down in the show notes. Get in the mix for the playoffs. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Find out what's happening around the league. Get mentally prepared for the postseason. If you're watching over on YouTube, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On YouTube channel. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.